So at 2, 3 in the morning, I'm walking from the south side of Uvalde to the north side. 14, 15 years old, just wandering the streets to go to knock on somebody else's house to let me sleep. So it's my other brother, the second oldest, and I started living with him, and he was all about the gang life, all about the drinking, the partying. And that's when I started to fight. That's when I started to drink. And by the time I was 16 years old, I was hooked on cocaine, kicked out of school, and it just kept on going. My brother put in my head that you don't talk, you fight, you talk after the fight. He put in my head that you don't let nobody disrespect you, and they're gonna make them respect you. They don't, and it was just always that. And he always told me, "You're not a follower, you're a leader." He just really put a lot of stuff into my head, and me being young, that's what I see.
Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Talk that talk. 2 planes on the runway. 2 destinations. Heaven or hell. They taking off someday. Could be Saturday through Sunday, Monday through Sunday. So get saved before that one day. Listen to that one way show. Yeah.
Welcome to One Way Podcast. I'm your host, Angel Ariola, and today we have a special guest. But before we start, I just want to let you know, different location. We're here in Prescott at the Bible conference. So I was able to come in contact with Victor, and he's going to share his testimony, and he's going to let us know how long he's been saved and how he came into the church. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
All right. My name is Victor Reyes. I'm 36 years old now. I got saved back in January 28, 2018. So in a couple of days, it'll be 18 days, it'll be 7 years saved. And I actually came into the church because one of my friends that I used to gangbang with started going to church. He got saved. So what happened is we were actually in San Antonio, and we had a free day, no children. We just had our son, and we went to a wedding and downtown at a big old chapel. And my wife actually says that to this day. She goes, "I learned that day I'm not Catholic." She was, it was a boring service, wedding, and it was just like, man, it was boring, to us. And we went to a movie. We were watching a movie, and we're like, we're downtown San Antonio. What can we do? And we said, you know what, man, let's go to the casino in Eagle Pass. So we said, let's go. We started driving, and we're like, well, we need a designated driver. We want to be drinking and driving. And so I found out, remember, my friend's going to church now. He don't drink. He don't do anything. He'll drive us. So I called him, and he had been saved a couple months. And I told him, hey, man, I want to go to the casino. Would you drive us? And he said, yeah, man. So he actually ended up taking us to Eagle Pass. And on the route to Eagle Pass, he started ministering to me. But the thing is that him and his girlfriend at that time, we just didn't really like to be around them much. They were always fighting in the way they behaved, and she didn't like me much. And it was just something about them that we were on that ride with them, that she's talking, she's loving on them. She's just talking about God. And I was like, man, who are these people, And it was crazy because as he started to minister to me, we both used to go to a Baptist church when we were younger. Now we know it was. And he just said, man, remember we used to go to church and we were there, and they were trying to give us the word of God, and it's all true. And he just started ministering to me. And on that road, it just reminded me that every single time I went to probation for 7 years, when I was on probation, I was always saying, God, let me walk out those doors. I'll go to church on Sunday. Never went. I go 7 years of just saying, God, every time I visit, I'm going to go. And then I remember just like right there, I feel like God told me, like, man, let's pick up one promise and go. So I told him, yo, man, I'm going to go on Sunday. The crazy part is on the way, when he's ministering to me, I was drinking a big old 24 Bud Light. I didn't even finish it. I threw it out the window at that moment. We went to the casino. That was actually my last beer ever. I even got saved yet. But it was just crazy. And we drove back. Next morning, he took me to church, and we walked in, and I remember just hearing my pastor preach, and I was like, man, I can hear this guy all day. And it's just 2 weeks later, it was February 11th. My wife answered the altar call in the morning. I answered the altar call in the evening, because I didn't really know about backsliding and all that. I knew that I was away from God, but I didn't understand about getting right with God, repenting again about what I'd done. And so I got saved that evening, and it was just, man, God's just been a great wonder from then. It was just, from that, just everything he brings with it, the deliverance, what he's done in our marriage, and he just saved us. And it was just been 7 years. It's been crazy, and it's just, but God truly saved us, because I told my wife and me really believed that year we're going to get divorced. We had been married going on about 9 years, and she wanted to throw me a big old birthday party that year for my birthday. I was going to turn 30. We're going to have a big old party, and she said, I'm going to get you kegs, I'm going to get you all this stuff. And my problem was that I was a cocaine addict. Right. She didn't like it, and she hated it when I'll do it, so she'll fight with me when I'll do it. And I told myself after I got saved, I was like, man, you know well in your heart that you would have got so coked up out of your mind that night in front of all her family and everybody, and they would have seen truly who you are, that she would have left you. And she goes, yeah, it probably was. She goes, we were broken. We didn't like being around each other. We couldn't treat each other right. We're more like roommates. But God really restored that. He moved in that, and He set us, and He's just made our marriage much stronger, man. And it's just been awesome. And my son as well, being a young age, everything he ever saw before then, completely gone from his mind. He don't remember none of the movies, none of that stuff. And thank God he was young enough where we didn't ruin him. But it's been awesome seeing what God's done in us and as how we came in, man. And I could go on into everything that's what we've been doing since then. But God has really saved us. And as a backslider, as from going into a church as younger and coming in, I knew at a young age God wanted me to preach.
Right.
I was 16 years old. I knew that's what He wanted. But that's why I really left the church, because I knew God was calling me for something. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
Wow.
I fought it for about 13 years. It took 13 years to come into church, and it's been almost 7 years. We're pioneering our second city, and it's just been a blessing. It's been awesome, and what God has done in us, and what He still has yet to do.
Right.
So,
And so you've been 7 years.
7 years.
And how old are you now?
I am 36. I was 29 when we came into the fellowship.
All right. Well, I want to go back to, so you grew up like in gangs and all that, right? And how did that, like, were your parents in your life?
So my dad was 55 years old when he had me. So by the time I turned 14, 8 days after my 14th birthday, my dad died of a heart attack at 69. So most of my childhood, I was actually a good kid. Really, I was just a kid who loved to watch sports. I was really into Pokemon and stuff like that. And
So hold on, but you're from Uvalde, though, right? Okay, all right, go ahead.
yeah, I'm born and raised in Uvalde, Texas. My family, I'm the youngest of 5 boys, and one sister is the oldest. So it's a 6 of us all together. And my parents, they weren't married. My mom was previously married and never got divorced. So she got my dad and never did anything with it. And when my dad died at 14 is when it really started going downhill. Believe it or not, I wouldn't do nothing bad, but at 12 I was already smoking cigarettes. But to me, it was nothing bad. It was just smoking cigarettes here and there, being a little, what I thought was being a kid. But when my dad died, it's really when I got an anger in my heart. And I know that now is that I got mad at the world. That I was like, God, you took my dad from me. Like, how dare you do that? I'm still a kid, And I actually recently said this recently in a sermon, that I realized that when I walked down the hall, my mom was hugging my dad, his dead body there. My brothers are there who were there, and she's like, well, come here. She's calling me, and I remember telling her no. And I'm crying, and I walk away, and I walk down that hall, that home we lived in. And I remember just such a hate in my heart already, and they just grew from there. I started to hate everybody else around me, my own mother, everybody, because I felt like I was lonely. I felt like nobody was looking at me, and before I knew it, by the time I'm 15, I'm living out of always walking the streets, because my mom lived with my oldest brother, and his girlfriend would kick me out a lot. She would get mad. So at 2 or 3 in the morning, I'm walking from the south side of Uvalde to the north side, 14, 15 years old, just wandering the streets to go to knock on somebody else's house and let me sleep. So it's my other brother, the second oldest, and I started living with him, and he was all about the gang life, all about the drinking, the partying. And that's when I started to fight. That's when I started to drink. And by the time I was 16 years old, I was hooked on cocaine, kicked out of school, and it just kept on going. My brother put in my head that you don't talk, you fight, you talk after the fight. He put it in my head that you don't let nobody disrespect you, and they're going to make them respect you if they don't. And it was just always that. And he always told me, you're not a follower, you're a leader. He just really put a lot of stuff into my head. And me being young, that's what I see. We partied, we had gangs, and we just were always partying. Every day was a party. From 5 in the afternoon to 10 in the morning, go to sleep, 5 in the afternoon, every single day. That's why I got hooked, because it was free. I didn't have to pay for nothing. And then
How many years are y'all apart?
He's 10 years older than me.
Oh, so he was already...
He already had kids. I was an uncle by the time I was 5 years old. So my brothers already had maybe an uncle so young. And so he was older than me. So I'm hanging around with 20-something year olds when I'm 16, 15. And they were like, oh, well, Victor likes to fight. Victor goes hard. He'll hit anybody. And that's the mindset he put in my head. All his friends as well. And it was just... And I remember telling my pastor, there's 3 key points in my life that I realized now, if he had done different, it would have changed me. The first time was when I got in a fight at school. We're there, and my mom gets the phone. She calls my brother, which is him, and I'm like, and he's gonna get mad at me. So I'm like scared, like I got in a fight, he's gonna get mad. The moment my brother got on the phone, all he said was, "Did you win?" I told him, "Yeah," because that's all that matters. And that right there built my ego in fighting.
Wow.
And then the next time, what happened is that his friend gave me coke, and that's when I first really did it. And he goes, "No worry, I'll tell your brother I gave it to you." My brother walks up later on and he's like, "Hey, I give your brother Coke, but he asked me for it." He lied. And I was like, "This dude." And my brother says, "Oh, you think you're a man now?" And I'm 15, 16 years old. And the rest of that night, my brother fed me Coke after Coke after Coke, throwing lines down, just feeding me. Next day, we're there. His friends come over, and all he told him was, "Hey, my brother does it now. So when you're passing it around, give him some."
Wow.
I told him that really jacked me up right there. I was like,
15 years old.
15, 16 years old, hooked on cocaine already. So I was still going to school doing it. And then
And where's your mama in all this right now?
my mom was too, honest truth, was just too worried about being heartbroken about my dad dying.
Right.
And by that's when my mom comes in the picture next, is that she wasn't buying me school clothes. My brother, the same brother, buys me school clothes. And at that time, Bells was like a big top poppy in school, back in 2005, 2004. And they're like, "Oh man, everybody buys Bells." So he went and brought me nice clothes, shoes, and everything. 2 weeks into school, and I get expelled. And she tells me, "Look at him. You spent all that money on him." And he goes, and this is the final one. He was just like, "Well, at least he looks nice." I remember that same day, my mom's like, "You're smoking cigarettes now?" I go, "I've been smoking cigarettes." She tell me, "Oh, you think you're all like you could just do what you want?" I go, "I don't live with you." And instead, my mom getting after me or anything like that. And I love my mom, but my mom just, I think, didn't know how to handle me.
Right.
And she already had dealt with 4 boys who were pretty much down the same path, And she just told me, "Give me a cigarette." And she sat there and smoked a cigarette right next to me on the porch. Wow. And I told her, "You don't raise me. I'm not in your home. I do what I want." And before I knew it, my path just kept on going further and further. And I thought I was on top of the world.
Right.
I thought, man, I could fight him. I want to fight people just because we had the same name. That's how
Right,
dumb I was. My sin was just ridiculous,
Right.
And it got to the point where the party stopped kind of because people got busted. So I had to start buying my habit.
Right.
So I started building houses when I got expelled from school. I'm 16. I'm ready to turn 17. And my paycheck, I'll work Monday to Friday. Come Friday, get paid. I was getting paid about $300 to $350 a week. Come Saturday morning, completely broke. I wasted about $1,200, $1,300 a month just on my cocaine addiction. My brother would get mad. There's points where he had to be trying to fight drug dealers' sons not be sending to me because I was blowing it every single night, completely just gone, just doing it.
And so your brother, did he work or he sold drugs?
He sold drugs and he worked.
Oh,
so
okay.
My brothers basically all built houses except for one. So we got all into the carpentry business, but he's the one that was mainly into the gangbanging and doing all that. And he's actually in prison right now as we speak, and it's just crazy. And he's now told me he's sorry for what he realized, and told him, "I forgive you. It's not your fault. Like you were lost too. Can't really explain you to."
You were enjoying it anyways, right? At that age, you were kind of like.
Yeah, I was just like, for me, it was like the life of the party. I really thought I was, and what kind of slowed me out just a little bit is that when I lost my eye, I got shot with a BB gun when I was about 18 years old, and kind of made me think like, hey, you almost got killed by a BB gun. You're not that. So I had to have my eye removed a couple of years later, but kind of stopped me from fighting and partying for a little bit.
And how did that occur?
I was just at a friend's house, maybe about 5 feet away, and his brother shooting a BB gun. And I was sitting down, and when my phone rang, I was waiting for somebody. I stood up, and I crossed fire with it. So it impacted me and hit me. So that actually led me into worse problems because I was okay with it, but some things took place where this guy started saying he did it on purpose. And then we got in some trouble later on, me and my other brother. And we went and vandalized the house, and he knew about it. But when the cops came asking, he went and told on us. So I ended up getting 6 months probation for him. I took the blame for everything for my brother and everybody else. And so I was more mad now. Like, all right, you took my eye. You snitched on me? I go, we don't do that. My brother always tells, oh, well, snitches get stitches. And next thing you know, my other brother's stepdaughter passes away, and I was really attached to her. I was just kind of in my feelings, getting drunk and everything. And I went looking for my friend, which was his brother, and he answered the door. And I already had been hearing he was saying stuff about me, and he knew that he wrote statements against me because he admitted it. He said he had to do it. And when I knocked looking for his brother, he closed the door in my face, and I didn't take over well with that. So I kept on drinking, and I got mad. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And next thing you know, I told him to take me back. And that night, I went to his house and knocked on his door, ended up dragging him up to his porch and assaulting him. And next thing you know, I'm on the run. A couple hours later, my same brother, who's been raising me most of my life and introduced me, comes up to me saying he's in San Antonio. He's in the hospital. He's bleeding inside his brain, is what they said. He goes, you know, if he doesn't make it, you're going to prison for the rest of your life. And me and my own drunken mindset right there, I'm like, it was worth it.
Mm.
But thank God, by the grace of God, that he survived.
Right.
I ended up getting 7 years probation for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and I had to just swallow that. I ended up getting married in the process. Me and my wife. Just
How old are you at all this time right here?
that I was 18. I'm not even 20.
Okay.
By the time I'm 18, I'm a felon. I'm already a felon.
Yeah.
I'm on the run. The cops are looking for me. It was bad. And in the midst of all this, my wife and me met each other, and so I ended up going to jail for a couple months until I went to court, and we got out, and we said we want to get married, and we got married, and then I settled down because I'm married, right? Like, but even after that, I wouldn't hang out with my friends that much, and we go to a party one night, and she didn't like me doing cocaine, obviously. And she goes and tells me, this is a good thing, is that she was very sneaky too. She goes, I know you're doing it. I saw you doing it. I was like, nah. I was like, and she goes, just tell me, I won't be so mad. And I go, okay, I was doing it with Edward. And she goes, I knew it. She lied to me. She got me to commit it. She got mad. She threw the wedding rings at me. She took off. And my friends, man, they were not good influences. Just like, oh, just go pawn them. We'll buy more beer. And they're hyping me up, man. And well, night goes on. We're drinking. And here I am, 7 years probation, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And some guy's being annoying at the party. And well, Victor says, I'll take care of him. So there I go again, assaulting another guy. And my brother calls me, what is wrong with you, dude? You're already on probation for one assault charge, and you go and assault another guy.
This is the oldest one.
That's the second oldest.
Oh, okay, this is not
so
the one.
He's the one that's been teaching me about everything. And I remember after that, I was like, I can't be around my friends. They're a bad influence, you know? So I remember going home full of blood, and my wife is just like looking at me, and I tell her, don't worry about it, it's not mine. I went to bed, and now she admits to me, she goes, I didn't go to sleep that night. She goes, I thought you killed somebody and you were going to kill me next. I was like, man, that is crazy. I go, I never knew that. She goes, I really thought you murdered somebody, and I didn't want to go back because I thought you were going to murder me too while I was asleep, because I knew. And that was one of the last times I ever really got in a fight. It was just still kind of partying, drinking, doing the drugs behind her back. And when she caught me, we just fight. Just fighting and fighting. And the thing that we learned is that we couldn't be alone together. If we didn't have people with us drinking or doing something, we just go to bed. And that's why we were so miserable in San Antonio too. It's like, we're alone, we can't do nothing, and we can never be alone together. It just was like there was no love. I guess we say we did love each other, but I think we're just comfortable.
Right.
But then it just came to pass where it's like, all right, man, like we got invited to church, and I remember being married, I think 8 years, a year before we went to church. I opened up to my wife finally that we're fighting one time. And I told her, did you know that when I get mad, I think about killing myself? And she looked at me, and she's an LVN as a nurse. I told her, when I'm mad, I really just think about killing myself. I go, when I'm driving, I think about just crashing into trees. I go, I think about slitting my throat, all these things. I told her, it's gone back since I was 10 years old. Wow. I go, I can remember as young as 10 years old, always thinking about killing myself. I told her, and when me and you fight, something in me just wants to kill myself. And I remember telling her, like, I need help. And as a nurse, I told her, she straight just told me, like, well, I can't help you. You need to go to the doctor or something. Dropped the conversation, never brought it up again. Went a whole entire another year and a half before coming to church. Wow. It was only God that took that away from me. But like looking back, I was like, man, we couldn't even help each other. Like I cried out to you. I was thinking about killing myself, and you had no solution. You didn't even pursue. Like, hey, man, you said this. Like, what's going on? She didn't really care to know about my feelings. Wow. And it was just, I guess we just said we loved each other, but we got used to each other is what it seemed like. Yeah, so.
Wow, that's crazy, dude. So, in all that, right, all this, when you wanted to kill yourself, the party and all that, any time, and that, did you ever think about, like, God or anything?
Man, honestly.
Did you go to church when you were younger, anything?
So when my dad died, that's when I went to the church for a little bit. So I know it's kind of a mix of a match. It's so when he died, I started just smoking more weed and kind of hanging out with my brother a little bit. It actually all started when I stopped going to church. So we grew up Catholic, and that was one of the biggest things. So we're just religious, you know. And when I got invited to that Christian church, I only went because we'll smoke weed and they would get food. So like, oh man, and there was girls and there was like basketball courts and everything. So we went. And when I left that church, when I said I knew God wanted to do with me, that's when I really got into all that. I started pursuing more into the gangs. I started doing the cocaine. I started sexual immorality, and it was just crazy. It was just I was just I even drew people out of the church. It was crazy. The girl I was dating was in the church, and she stopped going because of me, because they found out like, oh, we're dating and all that, and mom, they want to go anymore. And a lot of my friends that I was gangbanging with were going too, and they just stopped going too. Before you knew it, that little youth group they had shut down.
But this is not the Potter's House Church. This is another church.
It's another church that was in Uvalde. They had their own ministry there, and the man and the lady got kicked out of the church because of us as kids. They said we're just too rowdy and that we're not going to do anything. And the pastor didn't want to do the youth group with us no more. So they got their own building. They called it God's House for a while.
Right.
And for a while, we had a lot of the gangbangers from Uvalde of our generation going. And then just one day it was like, all right. And we just, all my friends will start going one by one. And when I left, the girl I was dating left, and a lot of the other girls, and just the younger kids would kind of go, and one or two high school kids, and eventually just dried out and just died out. And now to this day, I see the pastor that was from there, and he drinks.
Wow.
Tries to tell me about God, and he even tried to discourage me going to Kerrville when I talked to him about it. I told him, nah, I rebuke you. It's the will of God. Yeah. But it's crazy to think that now him himself, he's backslidden.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been crazy. But that's when it came down really, is that when I left that church, and I genuinely did get saved. I remember falling down, crying out to God. I'm reading the Bible. I'm learning about salvation. I literally cried out to God, and I was genuinely saved. I told my friends, I'm not gangbanging with y'all no more. I go, I'm not. They go, even if we fight, I go, I'm not going to get in, bro. I go, I'm giving my life to God. I'm going to serve God. But little by little, I just backslid in my heart. And when I backslid, it's when it really just blew up.
And was that because just like the environment where you're in, that maybe because you backslid?
And I think a lot of it was that because I was going and I still lived around my brothers and all that.
Right.
And it was just the influence kind of still with it. And I saw the flaws with them as well. Now that I know it, I didn't know then because they were teaching me as well. The woman was preaching more than the man, So it was, and I caught her cussing a couple of times. So it kind of, that didn't help me either. Like I'm already in the balance, but you're kind of showing me your true colors, saying that we could just ask for forgiveness later. Like, I was like, no, and they didn't believe in, they believe in that once saved, always saved. So I was like, you're saved. But he put that in me. He told me, Victor, as long as you gave your life to God one time, sincerely, genuinely, that you gave it to him and you lived from it, even if you go back to it all, he goes, you're still going to make heaven your home. So, of course, what do you think I'm going to do? Well, I gave God my heart. I started him for a little bit. I'm going to do what I want.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm still going to heaven. But man, it was a lie. I was like, man, 13 years, 14 years of living in that, man, I would have died and gone to hell. I was like, shh. And thank God for the fellowship, man, because coming in, I'm like, this is just crazy, man. Like knowing the truth about the Word of God, because they spoke about the Bible, but they never talk about the Holy Spirit. They never talk about anything else but that. No backsliding, about the preaching, the requirements of a preacher and nothing like that. And that's what the thing they lacked the most. And there was a youth group that impacted the city, because I remember outreaching with them. We actually started outreaching as a youth group, but like I said, it just died out. Everybody started falling into sin, and it just wiped out, and there was no more. And that's when my partying started happening more, and just opened the door to a bunch of. I remember just thinking like, this is what life's about: drinking, partying, getting with as many girls as I can, and that was my mindset. Honest truth. I told my wife, I'm really like. I wouldn't say luck. I would just say, I don't even know how to explain it. Every girl before her was like, tell them what they want, get what I want, see you later, don't call you no more. But she was just different, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess because we were friends first, so I would say we were just really good friends, and things just happened and we got together. But the times I did call out God were the worst times. Is when I was coked up out of my mind and I couldn't sleep at night. So I'll be there, God, if you let me go to sleep, I won't do this again. And well, there I am the next day. When I can't go to sleep every night. And like I said, every time I went to court, every time I went to probation, is the only time I would cry out to God. But I think what it was is that we were kind of broken more, is in the sense that when we got married.
So how old were you when you got together?
I was 20. No, I was 19.
When you got together?
Yeah.
And so
a couple of years.
Yeah, when was it whenever you felt like, when you said that you wanted to kill yourself, and then like, how?
I was about 26, 27 by the time. But I would always think about it. When I was 10 years old, I first thought about it. I told my mom, I remember, she didn't find out until I got saved in a sermon when I talked about it. That happened because I really don't know what triggered it at that moment. But I remember being there crying in the back room of our house. And I was so mad that I told myself, when they all go to sleep tonight, I'm going to go to the kitchen and get the biggest kitchen knife I can and just stab myself in the chest. And that's like in my head, I'm like, I'm gonna leave them know. Y'all didn't love me, y'all don't care about me, I don't know why I was mad at my family. And then I told myself, I'm not gonna write the letter. I'm just gonna kill myself, and my mom's gonna find me there. And they'll love me, they'll miss me. The only reason I didn't go through with it is because I cried to sleep. And when I fell asleep, I woke up and completely forgot about it. And after that, it was just every time I was doing something. And when we got married, and about a year and a half later, we had our first daughter. So we're in San Antonio, and she ended up passing away after 7 weeks. And I remember that was probably the only time I actually ever cried or prayed to God, was because I wanted my daughter to live. I knew she had a bad heart, but even in that sense, it didn't say going towards God. I still seeked drinking and partying where we got worse. And the crazy thing is, now I know that people were praying for us. So brother DJ and Rocio and our church, mother church, in Uvalde knew us. So when my daughter died, I ran into DJ at a Pico's by the church to buy beer, and he was working there, and he tried to give me a flyer to invite me to church. And I just told him, nah, man, that's good for you. I don't want that. Just let me buy my beer. And I remember telling him, just bring up my beer, man. And he even said, I'm sorry about your daughter. I go, all right, man. And he tells me now, he goes, man, you walked out that door, bro. He goes, and I prayed for you. My pastor now says, he goes, I remember DJ saying, well, I'm praying for a couple who just lost their daughter. He goes, we've been praying for y'all for over 7 years. And it was just crazy that we had many times to go to church, but we're just so lost in our sin that we didn't see it. The church was on the same side of the town we lived at. We'll drive by it. We didn't even see it. Because Uvalde is not that big as people think it is. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. But I never encountered the church. And then to make it even, I guess I was really blind, because where the church is at now was just literally not even a block away from my work. So I drove by it twice a day and never saw it. So when that guy took me to church, picked me up to go to the church that morning for men's class before actual service, I remember putting on, I go, that's a church? He goes, yeah. I go, dude, I drive by this twice a day. I don't see it. He goes, and all he told me was, brother, when you're in your sin, you're blind. You're blind. You can't see God.
Right.
And that's the truth. I was like,
so that was your first time ever going to the church? Men's
first
class?
Time. A men's class in the morning. And I guess I had the mindset because I went to church one time. I had been saved. All they got to do is just live for God again, because they imparted that in me. Once saved, always saved, now that I think about it. It was that same brother that when my wife went to the altar call February 11th in the morning, I got excited. I was like, man, she got saved. She's trying to serve God. And he tells me, when are you going to get saved? I was like, what are you talking about, bro? I'm here. I'm serving God. I'm like, I'm here. He goes, yeah, bro, but you backslid from God. You sinned against God since you left him. He goes, you need to repent for all that. And I was like, man, like, you're right. So I answered the altar call that night. And that's when I truly got saved, that February 11th. And that was the first, it was just 2 weeks after, I think, the one we went. And not even, say, 3-4 months later, that same brother that took me to church backslid. It's been over 6 years and he still hasn't gone back.
That's the one that gangbang with you, right?
Yeah.
So tell us, like, leading up to, like, what made you like, all right, I'm gonna go to church?
So believe it or not, I believe God heard my cry, my drunkenness. It was Eli that told me this, and it was crazy because I told him New Year's Eve of 2017, we were drinking, and everybody's like, well, what do you do for New Year's? And I was like, all right. And people were saying, so, everybody, we're going to lose weight, same old rituals and stuff. And I'm there, man, and I'm sitting there, and I remember just saying, you know what, I think I'm going to go to church. And they're like, church? And I was like, yeah, man, like, go to church Sunday morning, just have a relationship with God, not saying be committed or nothing. And I'm like that, like, we'll go get out and then get out in time to go watch the Cowboys games, we can still do our stuff, just go and kind of show my kids about it. And I remember my own wife saying, well, you could go by yourself, I'm not going with you. And everybody else, man, I'll drink to that. And they all cheered and drank to it. And I'm sitting there, and I remember, like, literally, I'm just like, man, it was just a thought, dude. And I took a drink of my beer. 28 days later, we walked into the church and never left. And he goes, even in your drunkenness, like, God heard your cry. And part of me was genuine. I was just like, man, I'm going to go to church, And all it took was 28 days there, and we walked in. And I really believe.
You say you were really tired of everything?
We're exhausted.
Right.
I'm telling you, like, I look at it. I was tired.
Right.
Our finances were in a wreck. We could not go out on a weekend, a Friday and Saturday, to hang out unless we had $350, $400 in our pocket. Why do you need that much money just to go out? we were bad with it. We wanted to have enough to buy beer, buy my cigarettes, and I could buy my drugs under the table that she's not seeing. And we can never be alone. Like I said, it was just there's times we were sitting in our living room and we had beer. We're drinking, and I drink a beer, she drinks a beer, and then after a while, we're like, "Want to go to the room?" I'm like, yeah, just go to bed because we couldn't be alone by ourselves. If we're gonna go somewhere, we just were tired of each other. We're tired of everything. I genuinely was just tired of the way I was living. Like I felt dead. I felt like I had no hope in my life. It was just, and I think that's why I was like so willing to go to church. And when I went, it just, man, just God dealt me that presence. And even before I answered the altar call, and probably a lot of people are gonna get kicked out of this. I say, some people will say it's radically saved. Some people will say it's kind of stupidity. Um, Maybe before my wife answered the altar call, like a week before that, a week after that, when we went to church, or 2 weeks, I'm not sure how many days it was. I sat down with her in our living room, and I really was like, I want to go to church. I'm not drinking no more, not smoking cigarettes, I'm not doing none of that. I told her, and I sat down with her because I know she wanted to keep on drinking and all that. And I told her, like, I really want to quit all this. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the way we're living. I really want to go to church. I want to live for God. Like, I don't want to go back to none of that. I'm tired of it. The fighting, everything. I told her, but if you're going to continue to do it, and this is how broken we were, like how much, I guess, our marriage was a wreck. I told her, like, if you really are not going to do it and you're going to keep on doing what you want, I know you're going to draw me back to it. I don't want that. I told her, so let me know now if you don't want to serve God or be in church, or we could get a divorce and I can marry somebody that does. I was like, my pastor asked me to this day, like, what were you thinking? I go, I don't know, Pastor. I guess I just really wanted God that much.
Yeah.
But she just said, she's like, hey, man, give me a chance to see if I like it, and we could go from there. And she tells me now, she goes, honestly, my own heart at that moment, I said, you want to see a sinner? I'll show you a sinner. But we started to go to church. We kept on going. And it's because I had played church before that. We had to go to other churches and nothing changed. But she said, I saw you truly change, to stop the drinking, the conversion in you. She goes, everything that just took place, she goes, and it made me want to have God. She goes, and I told her I see it now because when we used to get testimonies, she always say, oh, I remember when God did this to my husband, and then she'll talk about herself for a little bit. And then it changed one day where it's like what God did to me. It was always about what God did to me first, not her. And that's what it was. She said that she truly saw me get saved, and it drew her towards God and say, all right, God, you must be real if you can change this man. And it took God changing both of us. But we were pretty much tired of it. You could just tell we had been broken for years because of the loss of our daughter. We held on to that for years. We just couldn't let go of that. And then having miscarriage after miscarriage. And then my son was born in 2015, a couple of years before he was born with cerebral palsy. So I was like, man, our life's hard, like we never let him get discouraged. We always pushed them, but it was just like, man, God, we can't catch a break. Doctors literally told us the way it goes is that our daughter died of a heart condition, right? And we asked them, how common is this, what she had? They go, it's like 1 in a million. Then we have a miscarriage. And then we have a son born with cerebral palsy. They go, all these 3 things happen. Why does it happen? They did all the tests you could think of, and they couldn't find nothing. And we asked them, so what's the reason all this is happening to us? They go, y'all just basically have bad luck. Can you imagine somebody telling you just got bad luck? Well, man, your life. And we got like the worst marriage advice. We were told one time, your first 5 years of marriage, you're going to fight. And if you can make it through that, then you'll survive. So we thought fighting for 5 years was okay because that's what you're supposed to do. So it was horrible. We felt like we never had no hope. I myself, like I said, I was a felon. I was on probation for 7 years. I remember the head of probation telling me one day, why are you going to college? I was like, well, I want to do something in my life, He goes, why? You're always going to be a felon. You can never do nothing in your life. You can't get a career. So I stopped going to school.
Wow.
I lost all hope in myself. Never went back to school because of that. Got my GED, but I quit college. I always said it was for my wife could further herself to get OVN. I lost hope of myself that I can't do nothing because of my record. So I never went back to school.
And so all these people are just speaking this and that, and you're just...
All that.
Yeah.
It was always something just thrown in my face, and it seemed like that. But I know that deep down that all my stuff was rooted in anger. I was just always an angry person. That's why I like to fight. Take it out on other people. And that's just the way I was. It was all rooted in anger. And as that when they got fed, that's what it was. And my wife always told me that when we got together that I'm always mad. She goes, why are you mad? Why you always look angry? I go, it's just my face. And every photo you see me when I'm younger, everybody says, you look mad. You look mad. And it was not until my pastor's wife actually saw a photo of us that everybody that saw that picture always said, you look mad. You look mean. And it was her that said, you look hurt. She saw right through, and I remember looking at it now, and I was like, man, that's what it is. I'm hurt. I'm taking it out in anger. So I didn't know how to deal with things. Everything that happened in my life, I look back at it, it led to anger, it led to all the wrong decisions. My niece passes away. What I do, I get mad. I go and beat up a dude, almost kill him. My daughter dies, what I do, I get mad and go and just drink it away because I'm in my own sorrows, fight with my wife 24/7. It was just, in all reality, anger was my biggest sin that really ruined me.
And if you notice, well, what I've noticed since you've been saying it, it all led back from your dad.
Yeah. It does affect a lot of it. It does affect that. And my dad could have been there because in the end, I looked up to the wrong people. I love my brothers, but they didn't help me in the right direction. My brother, I told him with all my heart, I go, and I look at it now, I go, I looked up to you. You led me to all this. You gave me the wrong vision about women, about life, about money. You got me into it. And I remember him finding my older brother one day, and he's telling him, hey, man, he's out of control. What are you going to do? He wants to be like you. And he goes, he ain't like me. He's already passed me. He goes, ain't no stopping him. And I'm walking out the door, and I laughed. I'm like, yeah, ain't nobody to stop me.
But to you, it was like, yeah.
It fed my ego.
Yeah, right.
It fed me. But if my dad could have been alive, it would have been different. Because when my dad died is when everything changed. And then, an honest truth, I got the revelation today too, is that I didn't really know my dad, even as I think about it now. Everything I know about my dad is just hearsay. They all tell me how great my dad was, a great man he was, what he had done, how hard a worker he was, but I never got to see it myself because he did that in his younger years. And for my other brothers, I was the youngest. I didn't get to experience what they experienced. He was already 60-something years old by the time I was able to remember things with him. Because remember, I'm 14, he's 69.
Right.
I don't really remember much. You know, can you say what you remember you're doing at 7 or 8 years old? Not really.
Yeah.
So all I remember is my dad having strokes and being old. Wow. So everything I literally got that today in service. I was like, I only know what my dad was like because of what people say. All I remember my dad is being old and working on stuff outside, but I never saw him building houses, doing all this stuff and what he did. And they say he was and how great a man he was. I never got to experience all that. He was already older, and to make it worse, my dad spoke nothing with Spanish. I wasn't good with Spanish as a kid. I didn't know nothing of Spanish, so I rarely had conversations with my dad. But all my brothers and everybody say, man, that was, I go, yeah, but for y'all, not for me. Y'all don't get that as that. Y'all experienced that. Because there was a 6-year gap between my mom, from her two oldest boys, to my brother Mario. So there's 5 of us. So it's my brother Vicente, Quirino, then 6 years down is Mario, Lupe, and then me. So I'm like, yeah, there's a big gap. Y'all experienced more with our father. Y'all got him when he was like in his 40s, and because he was already older when he had all my brothers, and so I didn't really get to experience my dad. And I told him if I had a father figure in my life more, yeah, I would have made a difference. And that's why I looked up to my brother, like, man, like guide me, you know, help me. And his mindset was gangbang, fight, the drugs, the girls, and it's just all the wrong things. Wow. And it didn't help. And my mom, like I said, I love my mom. But my mom, honestly, truth, was so heartbroken about losing my dad, she forgot to raise me. And I told my other brother, I go, you got to understand that the world ate us up. Because I'm 14, my brother Lupe was 16 at that time. And while my dad dies, my mom is so heartbroken by him that a 25, 26-year-old woman picks up my brother at 16 and starts dating him to raise her 3 kids. I told him that wasn't right. I see that now. I was like, she was older than you. She had kids. But her mom was so broken that she didn't realize you're getting taken by some woman that was not right. She's 9 years older than you. She groomed you. I'm older, getting lost in drugs and alcohol and all the wrong things. And she just let us fall into the waves. I go in, but my mom was just broken. She didn't know how to deal with it. And still to this day, my mom's still broken. It's been over 23 years and she still mourns so heavy over my dad's death that she's never really had another true relationship or anything like that. Never moved on. She could have. She was still young. Because my dad and my mom were actually 20 years apart. So she was still in her 40s. She could have found another man or something. But it's just, she was broken. And so, yeah, I always tell everybody it started with my dad. And I know that. I've known that for years. Because when I had my assault charge, they took me to, I had probation. I had to go to mandatory anger management, and I wouldn't go. never go, never go. And one day he goes, you need to go. Why aren't you going? I guess I was really either feeling it or, man, I don't know, got comfortable with her or something. And I told her, I don't want to go because I know they want to get to the root of it. And she goes, well, what's that? I go, they're going to want to talk about my dad. I remember saying that. I go, my anger is because my dad died and I hate everybody because of it. So I knew, even as a sinner, that my anger came from losing my father. I was just hurt. Even though I had no true relation with my dad, it was just him being my home, and I had a father and that he died is what hurt me. And that's why I tell my wife I love that my kids, I'm here. That's why I try to do as much as my kids as I can. But even as a sinner, I always said, she told me I was a good father, even though I didn't see it, but I told her I never abandoned my kids. I didn't treat them wrong. I always raised them and loved them. But now I'm even more of a better father because I'm a man of God that could show my kids how to be right, how to live for God, and to truly love them. And I appreciate my kids, and I love them with all my heart. I was like, yeah. And that's why I need to take care of myself, because I want to live a long years where my sons are going to get the most out of me. Because I would hate for my kids to be 14 or 15 years old and I die on bad health, and they got to grow up with the mother or the world. Because it's, if I could go into that easily, so can my kids. And that's why I really think the presence of a father in home is very important. The Bible speaks about it, and it's, boy, it's the truth. We need to be in the home, and the father is very important. Because a lot of the biggest sinners are people that fall into some hard times or into some wicked things. It all comes with the lack of a father in the home.
Yeah, that's true, because I grew up the same way. 4 brothers, no dad, in and out, and we're all in the prison, gangs, and yeah, it's true. So it is,
yeah,
plays a big role. So I want to go to now, okay, you get saved, you come to church, you answer the altar call, you kind of get radically saved, right? And then your wife gets saved, and then what happens after that? Tell us about like your experience in the church and what you thought about everything. Like,
so we got saved, and I remember, maybe I say it was about 4 months later, my pastor actually tells me one day, hey, you want to pull an altar call? I was like, what? And I was like, sure. And it was on a movie night, and got a great revelation for myself that night. I'm going to church, I'm seeing how things go, and I tell myself, well, everybody's saved, it's a church. I really lacked a lot of knowledge and stuff. And so we do a movie night, and I remember I had an altar call ready, like something to talk about. And Brother Eli, who's pastoring now in Mexico, was the one that helped me a lot. He goes, yeah, man, just kind of do it like this and just bring salvation and just pray with people to answer the call, and I'm in my head, I'm like, nobody's going to answer the altar call. They're all saved. It's church. I'm just doing this. This is what we do. And I remember we showed The Thief in the Night. I think it was the second one. Yeah. A good old movie, right? And I put an altar call. And they have been blowing smoke in the little smoke machines for the fog machines. So it's kind of hard to see. And there's a big old bright light. And I was like, whoa, you can't really see. So I was like, hey, well, maybe you're not right with God and you want to get right with God, and just raise your hand. But then I see like a little flash in the back, like oh, okay, I guess they're seeing me as somebody. And I just said, maybe it's like 1 or something, So I was like, well, if you raise your hand, come forward. And next thing you know, I got 11 people standing in front of me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, well, thank God I prepared something to, So we prayed, and I remember thinking to myself that don't ever think just because people are in church, they're all right with God. And after that, my pastor started to use me more. Like, hey, he'll start using me for altar calls. And I was never really one for the music scenes, and just kind of altar calls and help with outreaches and just start taking off like that. And I remember there's a lot of spiritual growth that had to happen there, because I remember there was one day I'm at home. I'm really like, man, I don't know what happened. My wife started bumping heads, and next thing we're arguing, we're fighting, and we're arguing, and we kind of get over it. But after she's like, oh, let's go get something to eat. But something in my heart tells me, you need to stop holding on to this, and you gotta tell her. And she tells me, and I remember there, and it's something I've been going on for a while, and it's something I was not telling her. That was from our past before we got saved. And I remember God dealing with me so heavy, and I just said, I gotta do it. So I finally told her, I go, I wasn't faithful before we got married, and I had to tell her that, and I had cheated on her and all that. And of course, we were just dating, but it was heartbreaking to her, and it was something that I had to open up about, and and it just did something where I remember there, and she's like real emotional, and I'm like, man, I don't even know to do. So I call my pastor, and he comes over and to counsel us, and I remember telling him, Pastor, it was just I couldn't hold it, because the reason I don't really share this much, but I shared because it's important, because what God dealt me is that if I had kept on hiding that, I never say nothing, even as long as we got saved and she got converted and she was radically saved, but for me to hold on to that and never tell her, and she finds out years later, it's still gonna have impact like that. It's gonna ruin it. Like why would you lie to me? Why would you not? And I remember telling myself that I can't go out to pasture or pioneer work or do anything like that, and then this is there and it comes out, it'll ruin everything we're doing. It'll ruin the church, it'll ruin our marriage. I go, I can't hold on to that. And I told me it was tormenting because every time God was doing something great, my head would always tell me, but you're not being truthful about this. You haven't told her about this. So I remember saying, I got to get this out. And when we did, man, my pastor went, his wife, and they counseled us, and it was a healing process. But when God moved in that and He healed it, man, it brought such a love in our marriage. And my wife, and what it did in her, and it did in me in our marriage. And man, things just took off with that because I felt like that was the only thing that I was scared to let go of it or to deal with. A couple months later, my pastor's name was head usher in the church, and I think by that time, maybe the next year, next we're going into Kerrville, Texas for a pioneer work. It felt like our ministry just took off so quickly. And my pastor, the one thing he said is that he goes, y'all came in, y'all got saved, y'all were radically saved, y'all were getting it, you understand what we're about, you see the vision, you see what we're about as a fellowship. He goes, and y'all just grew so quickly in development. He goes, and that's why we send y'all first. Because not only that, because God said to send y'all first. We were the first church sent out of Uvalde, Texas, and it was just, man, I was beating myself up at first, like, man, God, why me? You got people like Frank, Eli, who've been here longer, they want to go out and preach, like, and God's like, because I'm choosing you. I remember doing myself. I remember Pastor was saying, no, he goes, why Victor? Because God said Victor. Because we're honoring God, and this is the work of God, and we're going to do it. I remember going, and it was just, man, pioneering was just it was a big opportunity for us and something we never experienced, but it was a great work. And it took off so quickly. It was just crazy what God was doing. And we had such a great experience in Kerrville and everything we did. And God was moving. People were getting saved. People were coming in. I remember 13 people coming in at one time in the service, all to our family. But in the end, what happens is that I come to realize that no matter what, you can't force people to live for God. They have to make that choice. And when they don't, you can't force them to come to church. There is no church. Right. And eventually, over time, we'd have to shut down the church and go on for redirection. So we were there for 2 years in Kerrville. And we went back home. We had been home back for a year. And just recently, this last January conferences, we ended up going to Rio Grande City, Texas. So we're now in our second pioneer work. We're there, believing in God. And I had just thought about this on the road over here. I was like, man, we're going on 7 years being saved. I go, look how quickly things have happened and what's taking place. And it's all because we just said, God, we're going to serve you. And we want to do this. And this is what we're going to be faithful to. And it's just, we learn how to surrender things to say, God, it's just in your hands. And even in church, we had 2 miscarriages. It didn't stop us from going, saying, God, you're not doing nothing. Everything we went through, it was not perfect. There was up and down battles. There's things we had to deal with. Like I said, me and my wife, and just even other little things like, hey, I was doing coke all this time behind your back, but we can laugh about it now. Like, what, you're doing that night? That's crazy, you know? And we talk about things like, man, it's just, now we can actually tell each other everything we ever done. And it was just by surrendering and saying, God, it's all yours. And He just used us. He just let us grow. We got in ministry. We did drama. We'll do testimonies and dramas, the concert scenes and outreaches, impacts, and our ministry just kept on growing. My wife was doing Sunday school and me doing children's church, everything that we did, and we just wanted to do whatever God called us to. And that's why we went to Kerrville, and we love it. I remember Pastor Z was asking me when we came back for redirection, he goes, so would you go back? You going to go back out again one day? I go, always. I go, it's what God called me to. I don't care if it's 20 times. I hope it's not 20 times that I have to keep on. I go, but it's what God's called us to do. And we're out there to do the will of God and to be a pastor and to pioneer church or pastor a church and to serve God until the day I die. And that's just what we're going to do. It's what God's called us to, and we're surrendered to it. Whether it's here in the U.S., overseas, God has us there in Rio Grande now, and that's where we're going to serve God until He says otherwise. And that's what we do. And it just blows my mind away about everything we've gone through. And it really was God, because, man, I was stubborn. I was prideful, even in church. I remember my pastor rebuked me. He'll tell me something. I'll be like, okay. And I had a little anger issue, and I'll just say, okay, and walk away. And then I started saying sorry all the time. I'm sorry, Pastor. Sorry, Pastor. Then when he goes, hey, brother, he goes, sorry doesn't always fix it. He goes, what are you going to do about it? You got to. So I realized, okay, me saying sorry doesn't mean I'm going to fix what I just did. So I started fixing it. Stop showing up late. Get here on time. Do things like that. Simple as that. So now when my pastor rebukes me or corrects me, I'm like, you're right, Pastor. I'm sorry. I'm going to fix that right now. If it's something I didn't do and I need to do, I'll go do it. And if it's something I'm doing, I need to stop doing it. I get it right and fix it for the next time it's time to come. And it's just God speaking to us. It was just, I said we were used for altar call, and I was used for altar call, and I think we were in the church like say 3 months, and I had a 70-inch TV in our home. Loved it. That was my baby. And I remember my pastor was preaching. It had nothing to do with that. And we're sitting in service. He has no idea. My wife whispers to me and leans over. And she goes, "Hey, I think we should get rid of our TV." I told her, "You're crazy." And the pastor wasn't looking at it. He was facing the other direction. I remember he's there, and he's like, "Man, husband, sometimes you need to listen to your wife." And I was just like, "Oh gosh." I was like, "There's no way pastor was looking at us, right?" He wasn't. I was looking at him when she did it, and he was facing that way, and he just happened to say to the next thing out of his mouth. That's just, I was like, "You know what, God, I'm gonna trust in you." And I remember getting rid of it. We had a 55-inch in the living room, and next thing you know, I'm always there in the living room. But it's because I realized that it's just garbage. I'm sitting there rotting my brain away with the TV.
Right.
I wouldn't read, I wouldn't pray, wouldn't hang out with my kids. It was just watch TV. And so I got rid of it. I was tired of it. And I said, "God, if I want more of you, I need to get rid of the world." And that's when things would just take off more. And we just kept on serving God. I remember being at the altar one day, and that's when I was at the altar, and I remember praying to God, "God, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it." And that's when God spoke to me. He goes, "Then preach my gospel." And I remember getting up, telling my pastor, "I feel like God's calling me, that I have a desire to preach." And so, right. And he told me there's going to be some things we're going to have to do. There's going to be some growth, correction, discipline, and say whatever you want to do. And it took me submitting to headship to get where I'm at today. One of the most important things I learned is that can't tell ourselves a lie that, "Oh, I made a mistake. My pastor will be mad." We think the worst when it comes to our pastors. I think is that
we
pastors and they rebuke me, that chew me out. Man, we always think the worst. And then you go and tell him, he's like, "Okay, we'll fix it." I was like, "Man, pastor, I was gonna beat myself for 2 weeks thinking you're gonna chew me out, or you're gonna sit me down." And he's like, "Nah, bro, it's not always like that." And one thing I learned is that you got to guard your heart. Doesn't matter how many years you've been saved. I remember being home for redirection, and my pastor told me, "Just don't let your emotions get the best of you." Because I was a little upset when we came back home, because I told myself I didn't want to look like a failure. That was my biggest fear, is going out and failing. He says, "You can't think like that. Don't let your emotions. There's more growth." And it was. Came back home. I started doing music ministries. Me and brother DJ started rapping, doing more, and I started doing song services. And so it was a spiritual growth for me and for the church to help others, and to help others rise up. And like I said, it doesn't matter how many years you're saved. Anybody could tell you this now. And in the time we're back home for redirection, I think maybe a couple months home, I just started losing it. I get mad in my head, and I'm just like believing every lie that I ain't good at nothing. My kids don't love me. My wife don't love me. I go, the pastor hates me. The church hates me. Nobody cares. Man, I started telling myself every lie under the sun. And I remember being mad, and I told my wife, "Get away from me. I don't want to talk." She even says, "I'm going to call pastor." I told him, "Call him. If you call him, I'm just going to leave." I go, "I don't want to be around nobody." I'm like losing it. Like I'm just frustrated. I'm just mad, saying, "I don't want to be around nobody." And I remember my pastor told her, "Leave him alone. Let him calm down." And she went to her room, and I remember being in there, and I was sitting on the couch mad. And I remember telling my pastor, I remember looking in the mirror when I was mad. I saw my old face. It looked like I was looking at the old Victor. And I sat on the couch, and I was falling asleep, and I was mad, and I had a headache and everything. And I'm like going like, "Oh, I'm just frustrated. I'm about to fall asleep." And I dozed off, and I woke up like that, and I was just like, "Dude, if you had died, you would have been in hell." I remember going in the room, and I just kind of went to my wife slowly and let her hug me, and kind of just like stopped, and I repented. I was like, "Man, God," I was like, "I don't know what that was." I go, "I shouldn't have let that get the best of me." And I remember going to my pastors, and I'm like, "Hey, pastor, I want to go talk to him," right? And he's like, "Hey, man," he goes, "Get underneath here, dude." I'm like thinking the worst again, right? He's gonna get mad at me. He goes, "Hey, I'm doing an oil change. You want to help me with this filter?" Just he waited till the next time we're in church. I went and sat down, and I talked to him, and just gave me counseling, and he understood. And I guess he just knew there's gonna be a time, there's gonna be a battle, or you're gonna get the best thoughts together of you and draw you out, or you're gonna. And I was just believing all the lies is what it was.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people, just because you think you've been saved for so many years, or people that have pioneered or gone out, doesn't mean pastors and people who are doing works have never been through it. Because the devil's attack you all the time. He's never gonna stop. Especially when you're in the will of God. He doesn't want you to do things for God. And I always stop and think, like, man, what would have happened if I just said I'm done, gave up? We wouldn't be in Rio Grande City right now. We wouldn't be where we're at. And we wouldn't be saved, obviously, because It's the devil's always going to come back, and he'll use what your worst thing is. And mine was always my anger, but God's taking that from me, and I learned that I cannot let that take over me, because if that's the same way it took over me before, it can happen again. Especially if you're not right with God. And that's why I tell people you gotta protect yourself from your old things or your old ways, your old thoughts, because if you're not careful, they'll ruin you. And my thing was just when I got angry, sometimes it just went off and on. And it's like, do what I want, don't care what nobody has to say. So I had to learn to tell myself, nah. But I learned a long time ago is that I tell people this because I got the revelation. As long as I could get to church, God will deal with me. Don't matter if you don't want to get there. Don't matter if you don't want to be there. Go, even if you're mad. I've been there. It happened one time, and that's where I got the revelation is that I don't know what got me mad. It was before we ever went out, and I was sitting at home, and I got mad. And my wife said, hey, let's go to church. And I told her, nah, I'm not going. I was mad again. I don't know what it was. And this was years ago. Before I ever went out. And I was so mad that she's like, come on, we gotta go to church. And I told her, if I go to church, I go, I'm gonna go lay out Pastor, I'm gonna go lay out Eli, I wanna go beat up every guy in church. For no reason, man. I was just like, why? And now I think about it, I was like, why? Why was I so mad at everybody? Like who do you think they are talking to me like that? Tell me what they want. And man, they don't know who I am, where I come from. Funny, and bro. I'm mad, dude. And I'm laying in bed, my wife goes, fine, I'm gonna go to church. Damn. I told her, fine, then leave, I don't care. So I'm gonna do one thing before I go. I'm gonna pray for her. I was like, get away from me. And I laid there and she put her hand on me and she prayed for me. And she was over there and she getting ready and everything. After I get up, I'm mad. I was like, hurry up, let's go. Go get in the car and we're driving to church. I'm mad, man. I'm just, I don't know why I'm mad. I'm still mad. Go to church. I'm sitting in the prayer room. I'm just looking at everybody all mad. Man, look at them. I'm like literally mad at everybody in the prayer room while you're praying. And I remember I was sitting there and everybody walked out and I literally said, man, God, send somebody in here. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm a little, and then here comes Brother Eli. What's up, man? What's up with you? I go, and there I am, all mad. Nothing, man. I literally just asked God to send somebody in. Here comes Brother Eli. I walk out all mad. Don't let him know I'm mad, but there I am. Song service going on, running the slides. I'm all mad back there running the slides while doing song service. And I remember we give testimonies on Sunday nights in our church, and they start giving testimonies. And I remember God just helped me. He goes, that's why you're here, man. Haven't I done things for you? You forget what I've done for you. And I remember I told myself, it doesn't matter how I feel, even if I'm mad and I don't want to be here, as long as I get here, God will deal with me. That's why I always tell people, even when you don't feel like going to church, you don't feel like being a Christian, or you don't feel like serving God, get up and go to church and God still will deal with you and remind you. And I think that always tied in with what Eli told me is that he goes, you got to wake up every day and decide to be a Christian. He goes, because any day you could just wake up and say, you know, God, I'm done, and go back to it all. Because you had to make that decision every day when you wake up to stay a Christian and serve God. He goes, because it's every day by day. He goes, for the rest of your life. Because it could come where one day you just say, I'm done with it. And that's what I learned is that's why we need to go to church. That's why I tell people Wednesday is important. You know, people will come Sunday morning, Sunday night, but no Wednesday. Because a lot can happen from Sunday to Wednesday. Yeah. From Sunday to Sunday. And a lot happens from Sunday morning to Sunday night, obviously, because I'm a testimony of it, man. I'm over here trying to fight the church for no reason. Between services. I was like, why am I, man? What did they even do to me? That was I guess I was just, something wasn't right in my heart is what I know. Yeah. And we always had to fight for our salvation. That's one thing I learned is that. And one thing I learned is that doesn't matter where you're from or what you came from, doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish. Because the life from hell is that this is the way you are, this is what you came from, and this is what you're supposed to be. Like they told me, you're always going to be a felon. I'm a felon right now, but I'm a man of God who serves God and still does things until people there's hope. Right. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the road says. It's what God says. Right. I got that on street preaching one day. The first time I got that boomerang, I go, man, it doesn't matter what the road says I am. It's what God could use me for. And I glorify his name by saying God took me out of that. The world might see me as a felon and as a criminal, but God says I could use you. Because how many know God didn't come for the paper people, man? Right. And that's the thing it's just, man, serving God there ain't nothing better than on this earth than that. Doesn't matter what the world could throw you, offer you. I feel like I've been through it. The only thing I never experienced was the fame, I guess, right? Fame and money. Yeah. I experienced the drugs, the life of fighting and jail and everything. And I don't like it. I don't want it. And it's just, I look back at it and I was like, man, like you were so miserable. And like, why can't you have found God sooner? But the testimony itself will help others one day. And that's one thing I learned is that God could change anybody. If He could change me, He could change anybody else. Because we all have our testimony. We all been through some things, and that's why I say I know it's important, because if it wasn't, uh, it's not now it wasn't for. But one of the things that helped me realize that God could really use me a lot was when I heard Pastor Roman Gutierrez and his testimony. What he's came out, I was like, man, God could use that guy. He could definitely use me. I ain't nobody. I was like, compared to Pastor Roman, I was like, man, Pastor Roman's done into some things, And it was his testimony and his preaching that I realized that if God could use him, He could use me. And that's when I told myself, because I thought, well, I'm a felon. I can't do nothing. And I was like, oh, man, it doesn't matter. You're not doing background checks of your criminal record. Like, they know we're all sinners. But that's what it was. And ever since then, I told myself, God, I'm going to serve you as no matter what. Doesn't matter how hard it gets. Doesn't matter what the world throws at me. We've been through it all. Why not? I've been through the drugs, the lonely times, the drinking, losing children. I've been through all that, and marriage problems, everything. Everything that's been possibly thrown at me, I could think of. Been to jail. I go, there's nothing the world could throw at me that's going to say I will stop serving God.
Yeah.
And anybody threw money at me, well, joke's on you. I got the mindset of tithing and giving. I go, you could try to throw the money all you want, but we had it. My wife was at OVN working. I was getting paid good money before we went out to Pioneer, and she doesn't work no more. Now I only work, and God provides. I go, we don't need the money. Her working is just to have all this extra money, and we have what we need to provide and to support ourselves. And I don't seek money. I don't seek all that. I want it just for the kingdom of God, and it gives my wife the opportunity to be home, to have our kids, and to have children. And I want to be fruitful. I want to have more kids. I got sons who say I want to be preachers one day, and that's like, man, I get a joy in my heart with that. And it's just been, man, it's crazy. Like I said, 7 years. Tell my wife I haven't matched it, though. This is my thing, is that I live more years in sin than I've been saved. So I can't wait till they say I've been saved longer than I've ever been a sinner. So got a couple of years on it, right? But it's been awesome, man. It's been a great opportunity, and the fellowship itself is one thing I love. Is the fellowship we have. We're very unique, and when to think about it, there's churches all around the road, and as y'all's church, the sister church up, y'all's church out San Antonio is one of the biggest churches I was always real attached to, like the brothers and people I encounter, and like, man, we have a fellowship who loves each other, and we pray for each other, and we're there for each other, and that's what I love about us the most, is that we're not alone.
Yeah,
and it's just awesome, man. People think serving God is boring. Nah, they just haven't experienced it. Is what it is, man.
we do everything they do. We just don't smoke, drink, we don't party.
We don't get as crazy as them, I guess you'd say.
We're not all. I think people think that you're a Christian, you're supposed to quote scripture all day, and then they be all boring. But
I think they encounter people who are so heavenly minded, they're no earthly good.
Yeah,
so they think that's how they all are. But people gotta learn that we were sinners once. We know how to relate to them, and I think a lot of the issues that people get, and I think I had before, is that church people are perfect, but we're not. People think going to heaven, that when they go to heaven, you're going to find perfect people. No, you're going to find redeemed people.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that, but again, it's like growing up Catholic, I was just religious.
Yeah.
And then losing my father and getting that type of anger and going down the wrong path. To sum it up, I guess all I was saying that's what it was. I never knew God. I never knew who God was. And so I came to church and had a true encounter with Him. And I did at a young age. When I was a teenager, like I said, I genuinely got saved. I backslid, and I didn't even know, I had not even tasted nothing of what God had for me. All I knew was about just repenting and being different, not doing what I was doing. But now that I'm a church, man, there's just so much more. It's more than that. There's so much more in His Word that we got to learn and grow. And you grow every day when you read it, and we can never stop growing. I might be where I am now, but 10 years from now, I'm not going to be where I was today. Yeah. God's always going to further us in our walk with Him, and I can't see what He has for me. What He has for the future for us, for me, my family, my kids. I'm about to have my third boy, and I tell my wife, I go, if it's God's will, I go, I would love to see the day that I'm on stage with my three sons. I go, but that's if God has that for them. I go, but if He does, then I'm going to do everything I can to further their walk and make sure they learn and grow and to love God and everything they need to know for what God has for their destiny. I'd rather have my kids serving God and be a man of God than anything else in the world. Right. And it's just a blessing.
Yeah.
And so
that's powerful testimony, bro. That's cool. But before we finish, what I'd like to do is I want you to leave a couple words of encouragement for anybody who may be watching, who's gone through who has similar background as you, or just words of encouragement to anybody.
And I would say one of the things I learned is that the devil is always going to attack you. And I learned that, especially when you want to pursue the will of God and that God has a purpose for you. Because sometimes the devil's scared of what we're going to do. And he's always coming after you. And one of the things that I learned is that, like I said, is that it doesn't matter how you feel or what you're going through. And when you wake up, go to church, get there. As long as you could get to church, God will do the rest. He's going to deal with you. That's one of the things I learned. And it's just, I think the biggest thing that allows us to do is that don't buy the lie. And you got to guard your heart, because sometimes we're the ones that deceive our own hearts. And I like to tell people that don't live inside your head, because that's where it all starts. It starts with a thought. It starts in our minds. We start thinking, we overthink things. We let things come into our head, and we're not careful. It starts putting it into our heart. And that's one of the things I learned over the years, that you got to stop living inside your head. And mistakes are going to happen, but you got to learn from them and you got to grow from them. And that's one of the things, I think one of the greatest illustrations I heard was that a mistake is a life lesson, not a life sentence. So stop living inside your head. Don't be a prisoner of your own head, because we will make mistakes and we'll live inside our heads and we beat ourselves up. And before we know it, we're just stuck there. And we think we just made one mistake and nope, I can't go forward. And we'll get stuck in that spot. You got to learn to say no. It's to learn. Get outside your head and don't be a prisoner of your own mind that I made a mistake and I can't go forward, or I can't be forgiven. Because we think that sometimes. We think when we make a mistake, everything's just, it's all over. It's just, I'm not. Nah. Don't let mistakes stop you from going forward in the will of God. Because I made plenty of mistakes. Trust me, you could ask my pastor. He's like, we're far from perfect. They're not sending out perfect people. Trust me, I will never be perfect. I only have one eye. How can you say I'm perfect? Yeah. I already lack something that everybody else does not have. I'm underqualified. But that's the one thing I learned, is that don't let your mistakes hold you back from going forward. You gotta learn to just say, you know what, I made a mistake. Truly get it right, and just go to church. It's all about getting to church, serving God, and root yourself. Don't just go to church and be there. Build yourself in the church and root yourself where it's not going to be easy for the devil to pull you out. Because if you're not rooted in the church, anything will draw you out. That's one thing I learned over time, is that you got to be rooted in it. You got to have a foundation in the church. You got to have relationship. You got to have fellowship. Because if you lack all that, before you know it, it's easy to get drawn out. And that's one of the biggest things I've seen people have. They come in, they have a desire for God, but they don't root themselves. They don't have fellowship. And before you know it, they're by themselves and they just go in their own head. It's always that. Because a lot of times people that left church, what happened? I was just thinking. It's always in the mind, man. People they live inside their heads too much. You just got to learn how not to live inside your head, man. But like I said, for those out there watching, whoever it does help, like I said, it's not going to be perfect. Yeah. You're going to come in, you're going to have to deal with some things, obviously, because we've done some things, especially when you're married. Yeah. God's going to deal with you to fix some things. And one of the things I learned is that you got to learn how to say sorry. Just, man, I'm sorry for what I've done, and let God move. And when God speaks to you, do it. And God will take care of the rest. God's never going to tell you to do something that you're going to regret later. I learned that a long time ago. Just, God, you're asking me to do this. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to honor you. And you know what you have for me. That's why I'm going to do it. And just obey the voice of God. Be faithful and be a servant. Go to church, serve God, and just love Him with all your heart, and God take care of the rest.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to give your life to Jesus Christ, just pray this simple prayer with me real quick. Say, Father God, I'm a sinner in need of a Savior. I ask that you forgive me of all my sin. Come into my heart and be my Lord and Savior. I believe you died on the cross and rose the third day. Thank you for forgiving me of all my sin. If you prayed that prayer and you need a church to go to, come in, that number on the bottom of the screen. Come in contact with us, and we'll help you find a local church to go to and start living for God. Thank you.
Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Got 2 one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Talk that talk, 2 planes on the runway. 2 destinations, heaven or hell, they taking off someday. Could be Saturday through Sunday, Monday through Sunday. So get saved before that one day. Listen to that one way show.